How
Everyone,
are you, man?
all good. How are you?
Oh, I'm excellent. I'm excellent.
What time is it for you?
Where I am, it is 7 o'clock in the morning, so
Okay.
not too
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. Right. Well, yeah, I suppose. Yeah. Where are you again? Sorry. Was it? It's not. I thought it might be LA. Was it or?
Alabama. I'm in
Oh, you
Alabama.
mentioned. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Which is north, right? But-
No, Alabama is east, and it's in the south. It's in the
Okay.
southeast
Oh,
side
wow.
of,
You're like miles off. Yeah, yeah. Fucking hell.
yeah. We're
I was thinking like
right
Washington
next
or
to
something.
Florida and Mississippi.
Okay. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah. I know. I know Deontay Wilder's from there. That's the only thing I know. Yeah, the
yeah.
boxer.
Where all the rednecks are.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, LA is where they all talk about war, and like Alabama's
Send you
where all the
guys.
people who actually fight it
Yeah,
come
yeah.
from.
Yeah, it's a joke, obviously said in jest, but it's probably quite true, I would imagine.
It really is. It's kind of it's something. It's a dynamic I also find kind of interesting about how like arbitrary the in-group out-group game is, and like me and Shael have talked about this a lot because now
Right,
I
right.
don't know if you noticed we have our own podcast that we spun off with the Grand Reckoning. So we've
Mm,
talked about this a lot, where it's kind of like if you know about American politics, the South is very has a high animosity towards like LA and New York, the like
okay,
hyper liberal, kind of philosophy versus like the conservative family values philosophy, right?
okay.
And so there's this like animosity towards them, right? But the second anybody picks on our liberal idiot wussy bitches up in New York, we'll send every last redneck to go fuck up whoever it is that even looks like that guy. You know what I mean? Like it's
Are you
very
talking
weird
internally there,
how
sorry?
like they went from, internal enemies to like overnight like I will fuck up anybody who fucks with my homies. Like they're
Right.
my people to make fun of. They're my people to attack. Don't you dare come after them. Like it's
Yeah, but
kind of weird how that in-group out-group it has that elasticity to it. Does that make sense?
I'm unaware of this sort of dynamic. So are these people who you're saying who attack, for example, are they Americans within America you're talking about?
Yeah, so like that's what I'm
Okay,
saying
I don't
within
know I don't
America.
know about these. Yeah, yeah.
So
I've
like
not
I'm
heard
talking
this.
about kind of like 9/11, that dynamic about
Yeah.
how you had this like all throughout, and even after, all throughout American history there's this like, issue with like the coastal elite versus like the people who actually work for a living. You know what I mean? And like in the South, that's kind of like that's that dynamic. Like we're actually out here in the heat doing stuff. You're
Mm,
living in paradise on the coasts with a lot of money in a bubble where you don't understand what the real world ramifications are. Like if you're in these bubbles in these elite areas, you don't understand what the problems of immigration would be. You don't
I'm with
see
you.
it.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
doesn't
yeah, yeah.
happen to you.
I
You know what I
understand. Yeah.
mean? It does to the South. So it's like there's this dynamic of you just don't get it. And
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
like I
yeah.
said, they always had this kind of disdain for like New York you know, and like I said, it's kind of like a weird half jealousy, half, look down at the same time. And like it's a weird dynamic that has always existed,
Mm.
and then like I said, but the second they got attacked by an outside force,
This is what I
those
was
are
asking. So it's an outside
Americans.
voice. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, that is what I'm
Yeah.
saying. So like, that's 9/11. It's this outside force. It's like those are
Okay.
Americans, and how fucking dare you attack Americans, and like how easily we relate to that. And it's kind of a weird thing that I've always kind of thought about, like how borders in and of themselves aren't really that tangible. Like I've lived in South Texas before, and like as you go south into Texas, culturally, language, everything, it just kind of slowly morphs into Mexico. It's not like there's this clear line. Like, yeah, they have a border and they have people there
Mm-mm.
that say this is where the line is. But what I mean is like that line isn't defining anything real. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
I do see what you mean. Obviously, I don't know the cultures too well there in terms of this, South Texas and Mexican, but I can imagine, it's similar in
and the
in
same
other
thing at the
places, I
north
think.
with Canada. Like, there's
Yeah,
this similarity of um,
they sound the same.
the North United States that has a very high similarity with Canada.
Mm,
You know what I'm saying? So it's just kind of like there's this like it's more of a like that's not how things work. Even within states, like if you get close to the Alabama Tennessee border, yeah, there's a line that somebody drew at one point, but it's really kind of a slow merge until you get to Tennessee, if that
mm.
makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, on the human level. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly what the wider sort of thought process is here in terms of where this is coming from, but from yourself, I mean. But I often think this as well. I don't know if this we've kind of just randomly gone into this, but
Yeah, I was just thinking out loud.
yeah, it's It kind of just rings a bell with something I've often thought in terms of like nationalism and stuff. I just don't care about like a flag and this is the line, like, do you know what I mean? It's just like but then, I don't know. Yeah,
Well,
I'm
yeah,
being
I'm
vague
I'm
there, maybe
I'm
intentionally.
heavily anarchist. So like
Yeah.
I've always kind of seen this thing as like, well, what do we need to well what we need is just free association, and then the
Mm,
cards can fall where they fall. People associate as they wish to associate. We don't all have to agree and we don't all have to do things the exact same way. And I actually think it's better if we don't. We don't know what. There's something to the humility of saying that I don't actually know that my prescription is correct.
right.
You know what I mean? I don't know that my ideology is actually right.
Mm.
And so the only way to find out which one is actually right is to have freedom, because then we can try everything.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think the problem is in practice, how does that work out? I don't know.
Well, it's just kind of one of those
It might
things.
just
It's
be
like
pure chaos and killing, and who knows?
well,
I don't
like
know. I'm just
that's
saying.
that's that's the argument. Well, I'm not arguing for force. That's kind of what I'm kind of
Yeah,
arguing against, and
yeah.
and that's kind of the game that I'm with.
I think there might be a bit of a
But
delay, maybe.
yeah, anarchism is not necessarily, devoid of rules. It's the idea of being devoid of rulers, if that makes sense. Like
Right,
the
right. Yeah.
whole the whole idea of early American like setup was very, close to anarchism, in that like they were trying to create a system where there wasn't any permanent rulers. So
Mm,
it's like starting to tilt towards that. Now we gave that up in a lot of ways
right. Yeah.
with the way that our bureaucratic system works, but I think that's, there's a wisdom to that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a wisdom to no one should be in charge of this forever.
No, I'm with you. Yeah. 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 I'm with you. I'm with you.
But let's get into some interesting questions, I think.
Yeah. Go for it. Yeah.
I kind of wanted to have you on. I'm I'm considered a heretic in all of my all the circles that I would consider myself a part of, so I think it's kind of funny. So I think an interfaith discussion would be fun.
Is that heresy?
I doubt that you've talked to non-Pauline Christians before. We are
Uh, um.
quite
Yeah. Go on. Sorry, I
quite
have a bad habit of
minority.
cutting people off. Yeah.
Go ahead though.
I think it's just a bit of a delay as well. So maybe we'll have to try to pick up on that. Yeah. Non. So I'm just casting my mind back to the bit of a email back and forth we had. Non. Did you say Pauline, did you say? Pauline.
Correct, non-Pauline. So basically, I reject Paul.
Right, got you.
So the letters of Paul in the canonized New Testament, I don't really, well, I wouldn't say fully per se reject. I would say that like I see him as just like an early Christian doing his best, but I don't see him as divinely inspired, if that makes sense.
Didn't he write most of the Bible though? I'm ignorant on a lot of this.
Well, most of the New Testament, yeah, what they would consider
Okay,
canonized. So
okay.
I also believe more in like I don't know if you're familiar with the Ethiopian Bible where they have quite a few extra books in there. Well, I wouldn't consider them extra.
I'm not sure.
Jesus himself cited them when he was doing his ministry, so I wouldn't consider them extra. But they were removed by the Catholic Church later in the, later in the Christian period. And like I
Okay,
said, I my big beef, just to sum it up with Paul, is that if you go to the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus said, "I have not come to change the law, but to fulfill it. None, not one jot or tittle shall change from the law until heaven and earth has come to pass." So at
okay,
that point, he's making it very clear that the law will not change. The law is the same, and the God gave you the law, and the law does not change ever. You don't get to sit here and make renditions, and
yeah.
that won't change until the end of the earth, right? And then Paul comes forth and says, "Hey, I got some revisions for you." And so for me, anything that he has to say past that is heresy because, you know, you're not a prophet. So you don't get to revise anything. You don't get to have a say. You don't get to place yourself above Jesus and say there is this new, way of doing things. So other people have an issue with me, but like that's kind of where it's like, I don't know, can you find for me anywhere that Jesus said, "Hey, there's going to be this guy named Paul that's going to come," after he says not one jot nor tittle, he goes, "Hey, but by the way, there will be a guy named Paul." Like, no, that's not what he says. He's very specific, he's very direct, and he tells you exactly what's going to happen, and he says to reject it. And so I'm just
Yeah,
following what I was told.
I'm thinking you sound like a fundamentalist extremist, I might be sort of described as perhaps I don't know, when they describe Islamism and fundamentalism and all these words that maybe we can talk about a bit if you wanted. I know you
Yeah, let's
mentioned
talk about it.
jihadism, but no, sorry, I'm just saying. I'm actually a bit surprised to be honest because I didn't get that impression from you. I'll have to have a look back at the messages, but I thought you were maybe a bit more fluid, but it sounds like you're a bit more actually strict in terms of these foundations of not changing. So I didn't expect that, yeah.
Well, but like, what is the law that we're talking about? The law states that you have a covenant that is you have two covenants that allow you access to God, and one is a preferred covenant and one is a less preferred covenant. And the question of the preferred covenant means that there's a lot more responsibility undertaken with it. So if you take said responsibility, you can get a greater reward. You can get more favor from God, but it's not necessary. You see what I'm saying? And this is
Yeah,
something that, I'm sure Yakov Shapiro kind of has
oh yeah.
explained to you as well. And this is kind of, I agree with that, basically that belief. So it's like, I don't necessarily need everyone to agree 100% with me, if
Okay,
that
yeah,
makes
yeah.
any sense.
I'm just looking back at the messages as well, yeah, just to refresh your mind, because it was about a month ago. Yeah, so you said you don't feel there's a need to convert those that already serve God. Is that the non-preferred method that you're referring to there?
Correct. Like, you know what I
Okay.
mean? Like,
So the
I
preferred
don't,
method is a religion you follow,
right,
like the
and
non-Pauline
again, it's a
Christianity.
preferred by God. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what God would prefer. This is the whole light into the world thing. This is the whole like, there's Jesus asks, what can I do? yeah, a rich man asks Jesus, "What can I do?" And Jesus says, "Have you done this? Have you done that?" And he's like, "Yeah, I do all the things." And he's like, "Well, what can I do to be perfect?" He's like, "Well, to be perfect, you can sell everything and give it all to the poor, and then come follow me and do the ministry." He's like, that's what it's saying. It's like there is good enough for sure, but then there's also perfect, and then that pleases God all the more. Does that make
Okay.
any sense?
Yeah, it does, but how do you define, what the non-preferred? I mean, yeah, this is kind
It's
of
the
new to me, to
Noahide.
be honest. It's a
Noahide,
Noahide.
man. Like, yeah, don't eat an animal while it's still alive. Don't
Mm.
kill. Don't rape. Don't, like most, don't worship false gods. Things like that.
So do you
Like
have to
that's
be a
why I'm saying it's
monotheist?
like all of the, basically all of Jews, Christians, Muslims all follow the Noahide by definition. So like my point is like if you're not perfect, you're not perfect, but
Yeah, but
if you're
sorry, so
following Noahide, you're good.
okay, be it indirectly or directly, she's following Noahide, you're good, you're saying, right? Yeah, yeah. So I mean, say like I don't know, us Hindus or something, would they be classed as also the non-preferred?
Hindus are worshiping shadows under my belief.
Okay, so
So
are
this
they
goes
not
to Enoch. I don't know how. What does Islam say on Enoch?
Enoch? It rings a bell. What is it? Sorry, I can't remember.
Enoch is considered apocrypha. It was removed after some issues, but lots of faithful, like again the Ethiopian Christians kept it. In Enoch, it speaks of what the chosen people actually means. There were
Okay,
numerous nations upon the earth, and God
yep,
chose one to be his, and then the other were placed under lower deities. These deities were corrupt. They didn't do their job. They took bribes. They didn't do as they were supposed to, and because of that, they were sentenced to die by the Most High, right?
okay,
And that is what's in the book of Enoch. And
right,
it
oh, okay,
said that that after they died, God would send the Messiah to replace all of all of those gods of those nations. So this is kind of where I see, Jesus as this replacement for those deities. So you're worshiping shadows of gods that don't exist anymore, that have
okay, but
died because they
yeah,
failed in their mission that was given to them by, the Most High, which was to
got
take
you.
care of these nations, which they didn't.
Got you. Okay, sorry. So just so I can cement my understanding of what, or the overall, the principles of what you're saying. So the ideal sort of religion or path to God is non-Pauline Christianity, or like fundamentalist Christianity. I don't know if you'd use that word. It has negative connotations, doesn't it? Like
It
orthodoxy. I
doesn't
don't know.
matter to me.
Yeah, yeah,
Fundamentals
cool.
are fundamentals.
Yeah, yeah, I agree, to be honest. And then the non-preferred methods are those who, be it indirectly or directly, confirm sort of adhere to the Noahide laws. So you would say Islam, doesn't permit like rape and what was it, eating
Murder.
animals alive. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So say Hinduism, I use as an example. That would fall out of those two. You're saying, right? And thus, do you then find a need to convert those to Hindus? Then you said you don't find a need to convert people who already worship God.
Well, there. I'll make sure I didn't mute myself. I had muted for when I hit my vape.
Noise.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a nuance to how I believe conversion should be done as well. Like
Okay.
there's there's the old parable of come with me and I'll make you fishers of men. And when you're fishing for men, it's a lot like when you're fishing for fish. You bait the hook with something that they want. Be a light unto the world.
Right,
You
right, right.
know, like there should be something about what you're doing that calls people in, that
Okay.
people say, hey, what is it that that guy has that I don't?
Mm-mm. Well,
And
so it's a
so
method you're talking
there,
about here, not the fact that you
right,
do
like
actually. Yeah.
so yes and no. Like I don't
Okay.
believe in any kind of force being used, but I
Yeah, yeah,
do
of course.
believe that, like, there's a method to how you do things that causes people to be a lot more receptive to what you're doing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
It's just because you said you don't find the need to convert people who already serve God. I just wanted to, yeah, clarify that. Okay. Oh, no, that's interesting. Yeah, yeah. You know what? I didn't know that before, so that's something I might look into actually. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was a
like I
long
said,
tangent to start
we
off
got
on.
into a lot of fights with early Christians, and a lot of killing happened. So
Mm,
the ideology that I have is a pretty small minority of Christians currently.
mm.
But like I said, I think, if you actually go in and play the textual basis game, I think we got a lot more backing than, what do you believe, tradition or the scripture?
Yeah,
And
yeah. I'm
that's
just
kind
noting
of
that down.
where,
I'm gonna have a look into that. Yeah. Yeah.
but like, yeah, there's a lot of it. It's pretty interesting. But let's get into
Yeah.
some
Sure.
of the ideas that you have. Here's another question before, because
Yeah, of
I've
course.
watched a few of your
I feel honored.
episodes, especially the Yakov Shapiro one. That one was amazing, and I would encourage every one of my followers to definitely watch it. It was a
Appreciate
very
that.
interesting episode. I love that kind of conversation where you have this dialogue where they're kind of like, I love the point he was really making where, like, he's like, halakha in a lot of cases is the basis of Sharia. So, like, when people are criticizing a lot of things that are in Sharia law, they are indirectly criticizing Judaism and they don't even realize it. So it
Mm.
is kind of interesting dynamic. I actually got blocked by the Misfit Patriot over this exact point
Okay.
where I was like, you are actually criticizing halakha right now, and you think you're just trying to be this anti-Islam guy, and you're
Yeah.
criticizing the Jews with them, and you don't realize it.
Yeah.
So it's what which so there's Sunni and then there's Shia. So which one would you say that you are more in line with?
Yeah. Yeah. So I just want to put a
And
caveat.
explain the difference
Yeah.
if you
Sorry.
know too much about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah, I just want to caveat everything I'm about to say with, I'm a born Muslim, just the average Muslim. I was born in the UK. My parents were born here. My heritage is Pakistani. My grandparents moved over after, the Second World War for work primarily. And I haven't studied Islam, and I'm not, I've spoken to you earlier. I can't give specific necessary. If you ask a question that is out of the average person's remit, I would say it's something probably that I can't answer. But I can give general overviews and that kind of thing, and that's what I'll be doing. And yeah, uh, hopefully that makes sense. I'm not claiming to speak for all Muslims or anything like that either. Yeah. So the thing
I
with
don't
that
know,
question
man.
is,
I think you're the spokesman for every Muslim on the
nah.
planet, and I think that's the perfect no.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of differences between Sunnis as well, and differences between Shia. So in terms of my adherence or background, it's Sunni, and then from there, I don't know what I would say beyond that, but Sunni, I guess, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I work with somebody who's Shia. So like I said,
Okay,
I've talked to, a lot of people from both ends. I am a little more familiar than probably most people that you
okay.
meet from Alabama. But so what is the real, like, difference between Sunni and Shia? I generally compare it to a lot of Christians to explain to Christians that, like, the beef is similar to the Protestant Catholic beef in that they are not that different in what they believe. It is fair to call them all Christians. It's not that different, but it's different enough that they have fought over it for a long time. if that makes sense. So what exactly are the differences that you can ascertain are like the big issue differences, if that makes sense?
Yeah, yeah. Well, if you take a step back, the divide, I don't even know if it's clear cut or not, as I say, because there are like subgroups in both Sunni and Shia, and some of them converge, some of them diverge. So it's you could be closer to, as a Sunni, you could be closer to, or your sort of subgroup could be closer to a Shia subgroup than it is another Sunni. So it gets a bit complicated, but it
I mean, this
stems
happens with
from.
Catholics and Protestants too, with
All right, okay,
Lutherans,
yeah.
and yeah, it does. Trust me.
So it stems from a divide during like early Islam in terms of and who took over as a caliphate and so on and so on and so forth. Almost, maybe you could say political, or political is probably the wrong word, but there's a differing opinion on things that happened, I guess, historically, right? That's the more sort of factual difference. Perhaps one could say, okay, look, agree to disagree on what happened back then, and we're here, like 1,000 years later. But the issue, I think, with because you're asking, sorry, you part of your question was it wasn't just a difference, but were you asking the unreconcilable difference that there seems to be why they keep on fighting?
Yeah, like that's what I'm kind of curious how, because like I said, you had the Catholic Protestant fighting that like for a long time was literal like swords on necks fighting,
Mm,
like they were killing each other over this. And you see this currently in the Middle East now, where you do actually have these Shia and Sunni fights, infighting, where they're literally killing each other over how much they disagree. Now, it's not everywhere, but like that quieted down over time as we kind of as Christians in general emphasized where they did agree. But what I'm kind of wondering is what is the actual disagreement that we're having here? You know what I mean? Whereas with the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Christians, it was a lot about the authority of the Pope himself.
Right, right, right.
And with if the Sunni Shia fight, like what is it that makes it where they can't go, hey, we have a difference of opinion and
Mm,
kind of consider it like denominations. It's no big deal. We're still all
yeah,
Islam.
yeah, yeah. No, I'm with you. Yeah, yeah. So I think what I was trying to say there was there's a difference in terms of the history, the understood history, and the rights and wrongs there, right? Which, as I say, perhaps you could say, okay, look, we agree to disagree on what should have happened, what has happened, but it has happened. Let's kind of continue, unified. But the other aspect is, and this I'm less. This is much you need. It's a scholarly thing to discuss the following, and that's the differences in belief, because some beliefs that some Shia hold, many Sunnis would consider them outside of Islam. Like they've broken, how you spoke about the foundations, the fundamentals, so these are what these differences are, I think, personally. I'm not saying I agree or disagree with them. I'm just saying that there's an actual faith-based difference, or what is claimed to be a faith-based difference. I'm trying to be as neutral as I can with what I'm saying. So,
There's a humility approach to faith that I think that a lot of people miss. And this is again like a lot of what admire about Yakov Shapiro is like this idea of I read what I've read, I know what I know, but hell, I could be wrong.
mm,
You know what I mean? I'm another human being just like you trying
yeah,
to
yeah,
figure it out. Like I that's also kind of part of the reason why I don't want to try too hard to like convert from someone else who's also following God, because maybe they're
right, right.
actually right and maybe I'm wrong and now I'm leading you astray. You know what I mean?
I'm with you.
So
Yeah, yeah.
like there's a level of humility to that, and I admire that kind of like aspect of you're like I don't want to sit here and make these guys feel like they're wrong. But like I said, and I
Yeah,
think that's beautiful. Like I want to know what's going on with jihadism, because from now I haven't done too much digging into the specific verses or any of that, but from what I understand,
Yeah.
there really isn't anybody with the actual authority to make this happen. And so this is why most traditional sects of Islam would say that these like jihadists in general are heretics. Am I incorrect in saying that?
I'm a bit lost in what you're saying, to be honest with you. When you say there isn't authority.
As from what I understand, like the jihad thing has to have a specific level of authority with the imam. Am I like in am I just making this up? Does
No,
that
no,
make do you
it
get what
sounds
I'm
like
saying?
something. Yeah, yeah, I think I do. Yeah. Well, if it
Like the
is
guy has to have a certain level of authority, and that guy, there is nobody with that level of authority anymore. Like
right,
all
right,
those
right,
guys are
right.
dead.
Okay, but is this in reference to, I don't know, a group somewhere that is saying that they are carrying out jihad? Is that what
Well,
you're
like
saying?
I would say so, like Osama bin Laden or
Mm.
Hamas or any of these people saying we have the authority to wage a holy war on behalf of Allah. I would say that in general, I don't think I don't think that you can just say something as anybody and then you get a reprieve from again God's laws. Does that make sense?
Kind of. I'm just wondering where you've heard that from, because it does frame, I guess, the understanding and the way I would personally answer it. Just jihad in general is, I'm not going to try and water anything down, and it's not again something I've studied or whatnot, but it's just associated with terrorism basically in the Western hemisphere, I would say, the Western world, or and that's why I mentioned earlier as well, like the word fundamentalist and stuff. They just it's just rife with sort of negative connotations. But, an act of jihad could be, I don't know, defending your family, defending whoever. I think what you're sort of referring to there is like if there was a caliphate and the caliphate, the leader, declared, a holy war on, whoever or whatever in whatever case. To say that there isn't a central authority to declare jihad, right? Therefore, jihad cannot be declared anywhere. I think that's a load of rubbish, personally. So, if there was a group, let's say there was a group, and they were defending their land, and they, let's just, for the sake of appeasement, let's just say they, or to make this analogy as simple and succinct as possible, let's just say they were following all of international law, whatever, and it was a genuine defense, and it was an invading army. It's still an act of jihad that they're carrying out in armed defense of an invading army. So for someone to say, I know you're not saying this, but someone has explained or whatever the case is, there can be no jihad because there's no central authority to declare it. It sounds like some kind of wishy-washy kind of thing. Or maybe they were addressing a specific point. I don't know what question was given to them, But yeah, as I say, there isn't a Islamic caliphate, as there was in the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him.
So
So there's no
let
centralized
me
Islam in
clarify
that
something.
sense. Yeah.
So what we're kind of getting at is I think what you're kind of getting at is more of a like jihad is being defined in numerous ways and
Exactly.
kind of
Yeah, yeah,
is
yeah.
in an offensive capability you would need such a caliphate to order such a thing. If that makes any sense, is that what you're explaining or am I reading into it a little bit too much?
Well, just with that, the last comment you made there in terms of you would need a caliphate to declare offensive jihad. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if that's a yes or no. I have no idea. But yeah, yeah. You're right in saying what I think poorly maybe trying to explain that is there isn't, the word jihad has been used in so many different ways that it kind of it's kind of pointless to use in a sense in a general conversation because
Well,
what does the person
something
even
that
mean
I've
by that
kind of
statement?
explained before is like when you see the United States go to war, we say God every other fifth word
Mm,
as as we're going. Go look at the Israelis, and when they're talking,
yeah,
they're quoting the Torah left and right.
yeah,
Like I don't think it's unique to any people to cite their religious texts and to cite their religion, and to that their God is with them when they go off to battle.
yeah,
So I do think that there is a little bit of an overestimation of how much of this is religion and how much of this is political. And I've said that for a very long time.
yeah,
Something I can say that's insanely controversial is I don't condone the murder of innocents, and I don't think that's right. And so like that's not the part that I'm getting at.
yeah,
But I think that there's this look at like Osama bin Laden, for instance, that
sure.
like he's this like, idiot goat herder, redneck kind of hillbilly guy. And I'm like,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
this
yeah.
guy was a military
Very
genius
sophisticated. Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
was a very, very obviously believed in what he was saying. Like he literally believed this stuff. And how do I know this? The man was a multi-billionaire. The man could have
Mm,
sat in a palace for the rest of his life in a lapse of luxury, and instead he led the United States government, the world's greatest superpower, on a manhunt for 20 years.
yeah. It's
You know what I
incredible.
mean?
Putting
So,
morals aside, and
yeah,
it's
like
unreal. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm never for the killing of innocents. I think that
Yeah, of
that is
course.
just like the utmost. And like I said, I see that the other, in every direction. But like, are we going to sit here and forget what he's reacting to? Like
Mm,
Madeleine
mm, mm.
Albright did not go on, what was it, NPR, and say that she thought the price of a million Iraqi children was worth it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've seen that clip. Yeah.
Like, like that didn't happen.
Mm,
Like, well, like let's sit here and let's have a little perspective of things. It's like if that was your perspective from that area, like I don't see how you don't see bin Laden as a hero. I see how he went from, a 250 guys in the middle of a desert to this giant, almost splintered off factions, this martyrdom, to where you have all these bin Ladenite factions who all are, see him as this glorious hero. Because, like I said, it's like, and the U.S. did that to him. Like, you know what I mean? We can't say, like, he could have been an irrelevant guy in the desert, but like the U.S. built him into that from the way that we fought him. And I think that you
mm.
can say the same thing for Hamas in the way that like Israel is fighting over there. Like you are building them into heroes that they are not. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah, I mean, we're shuffling a bit around,
And I would
but
say
I'm
not
following.
not all of them. And see, this is where like I would say that like, there's something to like again. We're gonna get controversial on this one today.
Yeah,
All
sure.
right,
Just remember the laws in the UK are more strict probably than the US. Yeah.
all right, all right.
No, it's
I'll
all
do
good.
my
I'm just
best.
messing. No, no, go
Let
for
me
it. I
know
mean,
if I have to
I'll
censor
I'll
anything to keep you
I'll
from
plead
going
the
to
fifth.
prison.
Yeah, yeah.
I will. I promise. I do not want you to go to jail.
No,
I'm
don't
in the
worry. It's all good.
U.S., so we can say whatever the hell we want.
Yeah,
But I'm gonna get a little controversial here and say
sure.
that
Yeah,
like
yeah,
there's something different from the like collectivization. Like I would even say this from the IDF's standpoint, right? There's something different from the person who's like, I want to wipe out the Palestinians, and the person who is like, no, there was a rocket that landed on my niece, and I'm going over there to defend my country. And I see that from both ends. You see what I'm saying? If you're Hamas and you're like, there was a rocket that landed on my niece, I'm defending my people. This is not going to stand. I'm sorry, that's noble. I don't care whether it's IDF or if it's Hamas or whatever. A man stands up for his family.
Okay, yeah, but what's
You
the
know what I
context
mean?
there, though? Yeah, I agree in principle.
Mm.
This is the thing. I agree in principle that events can take place and individuals can see them from a different angle, and and each,
Right.
maybe many of the soldiers who went from the US and carried out this illegal war in Iraq, for example, 1 million dead directly, was it, and 4 million they say indirectly with sanctions and so on. Maybe an individual felt in that moment, oh, I need to defend my people and so on and whatnot. I can see how in isolation that person, their sentiments are noble and their efforts, right? However, I think with the example that you're giving, just with the current context in 2025, given what's going on in Gaza, it will be very hard. It's very hard for me to see that a member of the IDF, someone in their family, is hit by a rocket, for example, or injured or killed, and for them their just noble response being, I'm going to go and attack in Gaza. Like, hold on, just sit back for 30 seconds and consider what's going on. You don't have to think long to, see maybe a bigger picture. And I think, if you're honest, you'll find your own government is uh is heavily responsible as well. So that's where I differ just slightly on
Like
what
I
you were
said,
saying there. Do you know what
I
I
don't
mean?
deny any of that, but again, like the thing about people's perspectives is they're
Mm.
always in a very tunnel vision way. Hold
Yeah,
on.
but that's not acceptable, I don't think.
I agree. And this is why like I try my best to, to put myself in all these positions. Like it's something that like even Shael, me and him have talked about it. It's something he said, like he told me about growing up. He grew up in Jerusalem,
Mm.
right? When he was a kid, this is when the second intifada is going off and
Yeah,
buses of Israeli kids are being blown up. And like
yeah,
this is what he grows up in. And
yeah.
like how old is Shael? That is the IDF right there. You know what I'm saying? So it's like these are people who watched their buddies, their brothers, their, best friend that they went to school blow up in a bus. You know what I'm saying? And like, don't get me wrong, I get why all of this happened. There's a context to all of this. But like, if you're 7, you don't see that context.
Yeah, yeah, but we're not talking about
And we
7-year-olds.
and yeah, and I get that we're not talking, and I'm not saying they're not responsible, but I'm
Mm.
getting at like this is the thing that I think that both Israelis and Palestinians have such a problem seeing in each other is this like you guys have fought for a while and it's not unreasonable that the fight has happened. I've done a lot of digging into the history. I get why the fight has happened, but like it's created a situation where you have the ability to be the most empathic with both of each other. Like you know what I mean? Like it's at the situation where you've both went through the same thing, albeit in one situation definitely at a greater degree, but it's like a situation where it's like, you know, do you know what it's like to have your kids blown up in a school bus? Yes, we both know that we both know that. We actually both know what that is. You know what I mean? Like we both know what that is. We both know what it is to be a mother digging a child out of rubble. So why are we denying each other's humanity at this point? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think so. I
Like
think
and
so.
like I said, there's something to like the dispossession and the right of return. Like this is something that I've said to a lot of Zionists that gets them really mad, but it's the truth. Is it that like denying the right of return to Palestinians fundamentally undermines the justification of the creation of Israel itself? You said that the reason that you need this is because you want to return to your land that you were dispossessed 2,000 years ago. Well, they were dispossessed 60 years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
You see what I'm
That's a good
saying?
point.
So like what
Yeah,
do
yeah.
they have to wait till 2000 years and then they get to come back? Is that the deal?
Mm.
Or is it wrong that it was that long? and you need to remedy this now. So it's like you're fundamentally undermining the justification of the existence of your state in the first place by continuing to deny this.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? So like, what is it like? There's such a similarity in both of the stories that I just don't understand how you can't have this empathy to each other. You know what I mean? And and like I
Yeah.
said, I know it's way more necessary at this point to come from the side that has power. And so everybody's always focused on Israel. And I normally am too. But it's something that when I do find a lot of Palestinian activists who kind of have strayed from that point, I like to make that point that it's like you do have to realize what they're having to fight against internally, the level of fear, the level of what has been done to them and
I don't
why they
believe
have
it's
gotten to
fear.
that.
I'm gonna have to say I don't agree entirely
Well, I wouldn't,
with what you're saying,
maybe
to be
not
honest.
fear per se, more like spiteful rage. Like there's something to that, like, how dare they do this to me?
Yeah,
Is
sure,
it
yeah,
is it seems more like that. So like I said, I like spiteful rage might be more the argument because like I said, again, and I know that all too well as an American post 9/11.
yeah.
The spiteful rage, and like I said, I was all in. I was let's make sand glow. I get it. Like I
Yeah.
really do. Like and the thing is the average American had no clue what was going on. I didn't know about what was going on, and the fact that we had been over in the Middle East screwing around since the 80s. I
Mm.
didn't know that. You know what I mean? I didn't know that until like 2010,
Yep.
2012.
Yeah, yeah. So this is exactly my point earlier. You know, I can see how an individual like yourself at that point, ignorant to say the wider context, has a noble view, you could say, of okay, we've been attacked, innocents killed for absolutely no reason. We need to hit them back. We need to maybe not noble's not the right word if it's maybe revenge, but you in that isolated sort of view, you feel okay, my people have been attacked, it was unprovoked, we need to get those guys back. I can see that, but with the context of the Israel-Palestine thing, I mean, it's been going on for so long, as you say. I do not see, even on October 7th, to be honest, you know I okay, maybe there's the shock in the moment and so on, but after, I don't know, a few days, a few weeks, you have to turn around and say, hold on, what have we been doing to these people? And that's not justifying it or anything like that, but I will not agree with you or anyone, sort of respecting or agreeing with allowing, almost, so to speak, that it's a justified sort of thought process. And in Israeli, a few weeks after saying, let's, you know, we have to attack them, get them back. Like, if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, surely you know what's going on a few miles away. You've blockaded them for like 18 years. I'm kind of a bit all over the place, but I'm just saying it's not it's like the example you gave was, you've been attacked, the US
I
has been
I I
attacked, and,
I
and you don't
give
know
no
what's been going on the other side of the world. Here we're talking about, like, this is literally within your land. Like, what's going on down the road, like 30 miles away. We're not talking about you're meddling, hundreds of miles away. You
yeah,
know
and,
what
and
your
I do
government, they
know that
have been
like
doing. So I don't find that
I do know that
an
like
acceptable thought
it's kind of
process.
it's kind of hard to see it that way given the culture that I've grown up in, but I would even
Mm,
argue that the Israeli culture seems to be a lot more Spartan-esque than even the US culture, like very militant, very idolizes their military in a very interesting
yeah,
way. Like they will throw a prime minister in prison tomorrow, but like a regular IDF soldier is not going to face any consequences to anything they ever do. Like it's crazy, like how much they idolize the military.
yeah, yeah, for
It
sure.
it, it
And
it is very interesting. Because we kind of have like the opposite in the US. Like we'll throw a guy in the military under the bus for something the politician told him to do.
mm, Well, how? Yeah, I mean, maybe it's to do with the proportionality. How many people? There's 330 million in the US, something like that. And how big is the army in terms of personnel? I'm not sure. Is it in the
I'm not
hundreds?
sure off the top of my head,
Yeah, but it's probably
but
the ratio is probably way far apart compared
I
to
will say
Israel.
we got a lot more like that, right after 9/11, where it was
Yeah,
like
right.
if you
Which
don't
you'd
support the
expect. Yeah,
troops, you're a fucking Nazi.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's always like that, and that's something that people call like that's something that people call the rally around the flag effect,
Right. And
and like
unites
this
people,
is
doesn't it?
something that like was expected. I mean, this is something that like when you go and you look at what Hamas did on October
Mm,
7th, this is something that I talked about with a lot of my friends where I was
okay.
like the whole point of this is the same point of why Al Qaeda attacked us, because at that point I was wise. You know what I mean? I had learned what happened on 9/11. I learned what the mistakes were, and so I was like, okay, I think I figured out what it was that was what the mistakes were. So like if you look at Al Qaeda didn't think that they were going to sink the United States from a single attack on 9/11. They thought they were going to draw us into a military conflict that was going to cause damage to the US from both a propaganda side and a financial side. And if you go and you look, that is exactly what Hamas was attempting to do. Hamas was not attempting to destroy Israel in that one attack. They were attempting to bait Israel into doing exactly what Israel is doing now, so everybody can point and go, see, we told you. They knew the level of militancy in that culture. They knew what they were provoking. They knew what they were going to get out of these people when they did what they did. And so, like, that is kind of the point that I've said is like, if you were to do this the right way, per se, which would be, hey, what Hamas did was wrong. We're going to go after these guys and destroy them. But what their grievances were might have had some points. You see what I'm saying? Then you go and you selectively eliminate those guys. Then you go and you set up actually, if you actually were to set up a two-state solution or even a one state with equal rights, which Palestinians actually have offered numerous times to say, hey, actually, you can have it all and we can have one big state if you want. That has actually been offered numerous times. It's the Israelis that actually, decline that because they don't want the demographics. So,
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. Yeah.
so like
I'm
like
not.
I said,
Yeah.
if you were to take at that point, and again, like there's something to the propaganda value of like taking that like this Jesus talked about it. It's turning the other cheek. It's going, hey, we're going to go after the people who just showed us they're our enemies, but you guys are our friends. You guys were peaceful. You guys didn't come over here and attack us, and we are kind of screwing you guys. They pointed it out, but we're going to go after them, and we're going to give you guys what you want because you've been being peaceful. You see what I'm saying? And then that actually is a propaganda victory because you're like, I'm the good guy. I'm not like them. I didn't go and flatten them. Isn't that what most people would do? Is they would go and try to flatten Gaza. You see what I'm saying? Like you have that propaganda victory by not doing that thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, sure. That's one way you could look at it. I mean, it's okay. I would say this: that approach certainly would have gone down better
And not
in
just a
terms of.
propaganda victory to the world, to the Palestinian people. You know what I mean? Like that's the
Mm,
biggest open arm to them going, hey, you know what? What we did was fucked up, but we're not even going to hold what Hamas just did against you as you expect us to. We're actually going to take a step back and offer you equality. Like if you
okay,
actually
but
had that happen, I know it's a crazy lofty thing to say. I'm
yeah.
just making that point. If that was
Mm,
offered, you might actually have a lot of Palestinians go, you know what? That's pretty cool. You know what I mean? Maybe they are going to be different from now on. Maybe we can trust these guys.
mm.
You know what I mean? Because of the level of height of that offer. Again, I know I'm an idealist. I know I'm a hippie, but I think it's possible. I think that, Muslims and Jews have lived in that area for millennia, and I think they can do it again.
Yeah, I don't think there's a well. Okay, for one, there's a few different points I think you made there, but just in terms of that last one, Muslims and Jews could live there. they have for millennia. You know, they as an outsider looking in, I'm seeing the phrasing you use there, Muslims and Jews. You know, they have lived there for millennia. They can again, you know, implies that there's an issue between Muslims and Jews currently, right?
No, I'm implying that there isn't. That's kind of the point that I'm getting at. Is there? It's not. It's more of a political issue
Oh,
than it
sorry.
is an
Okay.
actual religious one. Because if Muslims, Christians, and Jews lived there for millennia and they weren't killing each other, at a constant pace. Not to say there was no issues between
Yeah, sure.
anybody. I mean, we're talking about the, mid 16th and 17th century. Like, there's issues between people all the time at that time.
But
We're
it's nothing
talking
like
wild, wild
Europe for the
west
Jews,
everywhere.
for example.
It was nothing like Europe for the Jews. Like this is actually, I can't remember exactly who said it, but he was saying while the others were running around in rough furs, we were writing, poetry, and they were referring to the Jews and the Arabs both, and saying like, look at these European cavemen while they were still doing crazy shit like
Right.
running around in rough furs. We were writing poetry in this in the Middle East,
Mm.
so like the Jews actually one of the biggest reasons they picked that area was because that generally Christians, Muslims, and Jews were able to live in that area in peace, unlike most of the rest of the world. Jews were heavily persecuted.
Yeah. What Jews? Which Jews picked that area?
Zionists, early
Okay.
Zionists,
Well, I
like
don't think it was for
if
that
you
reason. I don't think it was for the sake
some of
of.
them, not all of them, like I said, there was this sentiment in the early Zionist circles that, Europeans were never going to be safe, and this was really solidified by Hitler,
Mm.
but Europe was never going to be safe for the Jews. So basically our only choice is to, set up Israel or go to America. And that's why
Right,
if you
right.
kind of
But
look at the
yeah,
situation we have now, that's basically where all the Jews are, is in America and Israel.
yeah. But sorry, you said because historically they had lived there safely, but I don't think that's the reason they chose. You know, Israel Palestine, was it? I mean, I'm saying I don't. Oh, that's
Well,
not
I
my
mean, it's
understanding.
part of the reason.
It's because it
It's part
united.
of the
It's because
reason. And
yeah.
and and I can't remember which king it was, but it was one of the kings of, I think it was the Ottoman Empire, who specifically knew that they were coming and said, "We welcome our cousins the Jews."
Mm,
So like specifically, like you had way early in Zionism, when you like the real early adopters in the late 1800s,
yeah.
that were when they were coming, like the Muslims were actually pretty cool with it. They were like, okay, like these guys were always here, we were always cool with them, that like they don't disagree with our religion, we're good. Like they were welcomed, and they wanted them to come there because, and a lot of times they were bringing, wealth and knowledge and things like that, so they liked it. The Ottoman Empire was encouraging it, as a lot of these European empires were basically kicking these guys out or murdering them, or and various other, really horrific things.
Mm,
So like, not to say that they got there and they got treated with perfect, equality of, American, liberalism. Of course they
right.
didn't. That, you had like demi taxes and things like that. But like, in the grand scheme of things, it's like one of the only places in the world they were allowed to own property. They were allowed to do basically any job. They were allowed, like, it's to them, you're talking about apples and oranges at the time period.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
You
it
mentioned
became
demi
a
taxes? Demi taxes. Can you
right.
just expand on that a bit?
The idea of that is just basically, from what I understand, it's a tax for people who are not Muslim in Muslim countries.
Yeah, yeah.
That's basically as far as I understand it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know a whole lot about all of this. I'm just curious because I do hear these things sometimes, and I just wonder, and I'll use sort of you as like a case study, yeah, just for myself. So, just in terms of like maybe if how much of a wider understanding there is, and it might be beyond what I know, you know. So, so the dhimmi tax, as far as I understand, is so it's non-Muslims who are living within like Islamic domain, as in under the protection of Muslims. So Muslim men would have to serve, for example, but anyone who's non-Muslim, a dhimmi, doesn't, right? So you know that as well. Yeah, you knew
Did
that.
not know that. So
Oh,
that's
you didn't know that.
interesting. So
So
basically what it
I'm just
is,
poking and
you're
trying to
paying a
understand.
tax, but they can be drafted,
Uh, the people
is
paying the
basically what
tax,
you're saying.
the dhimmis can't be
Right.
drafted.
That's what
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
saying. Like, in lieu of being able to be drafted, you're paying a tax.
I'm not necessarily saying that these two things are directly linked necessarily. I'm just saying this is the wider picture, part of the wider picture. Maybe I'm wrong and I'm missing something. But in addition to that, Muslims also pay zakah. I don't know if you heard of that. It's a mandatory charity. If you have, it varies because of the conversion, but in a every year, if you have saved, let's say, around $2,500, if you have that saved up, then you have to give 2.5% of that back, basically, and then that is then split between those who are under that threshold potentially, or there are specific ways of checking calculating these things, if they don't own a house or if they have what their income is, whatever. But it's basically divided amongst the poor. So that 2.5%, dhimmi would also, they wouldn't pay that. They don't pay that tax. So I'm just saying, so it's just interesting for me to be able to, because I sometimes I watch videos and people talk about dhimmi and I'm
I
thinking,
love that
do they
though. Like I
know,
want you to do that. That's why I wanted to have this conversation, is because like it's something that like I feel like so many people stand this religion, and like I said, it's a lengthy text. It's in a different language, and I mean I know there's English translations, but people misunderstand the Bible and they've studied it their whole life.
but here's a question: why do you know, with it being such a big, such a broad religion and so on, as you sort of mentioned there, a question personally for you I have here: why do you know about the dhimmi tax?
Well, like I said, because a lot of this stuff is, of course, presented in a very anti-Islam fashion. I think
You know about the dhimmi tax, but you don't
a
know.
growing recognition of mine is that if you pay very specific attention to how really heavy anti-Semitic circles work. Go look at go dig deep into an anti-Semitic rabbit hole and start
Okay.
looking at all the rhymes with how it's identical to how they're attacking Islam. They're
Mm-hmm.
taking things that are out of context.
Yeah, yeah,
They'll
yeah.
take a verse that's referring to, an order given during a war and say this is a command of Islam that you have to always do, when it's just a historical account of an order given by a general in a
Yeah.
war. You know
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean?
No, that's bang on. Yes,
Like it's
sorry.
intentionally taking out of context to
Yeah,
create
yeah, yeah.
a hatred for a people.
Yeah, yeah. I just want to be clear. So I wasn't trying to attack you or anything like that. Just to be clear to yourself and
No, no,
viewers,
no. I know
But
exactly what you're getting at, and it's a good point to make.
yeah, yeah. And I'm just saying this for others as well. If it's quite interesting that an American has heard about a dhimmi tax, but they haven't heard about the zakah, which only Muslims pay.
Actually, yeah,
Oh, you have. Sorry. Okay. Or they haven't, or they don't know
yeah.
that dhimmis are under the protection of the state and they don't serve.
I'm more of an extremist than that
Yeah.
on that one. Actually, just to give a
Do you see what I'm saying, though? It's
going
interesting, isn't
back
it?
to the point that I made earlier with the
Yeah.
wealthy man asked, how can you serve better? And he said,
Yeah.
sell everything you have and give it to the poor. I do believe that, like, again, the very best is to own as little as possible and give everything to people who need it. That is the very best. That is the best thing that you can do with any excess that you have, is give it to those who need it.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
And it's not about 2.5%. It's whatever the hell's left. You know what I
Well,
mean?
yeah.
Whatever's
The
left, man.
2.5% is just is just
It's a minimum, I'm
obligatory.
sure.
Yeah. 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 But
Right,
beyond that,
right.
you're
But
encouraged to do whatever you can.
I'm getting at, like, I think there's something to, like, I do like that. I like there's some traditions that I really love as I've looked into Islam that I think are beautiful. Inshallah, I've told you that one. Like that one, I think
Oh
is
yeah.
very
Yeah.
beautiful because
Yeah.
there is a reminder in that like our agency is fake.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and I love it. I love it. So, why don't you go ahead and explain that? Explain the phrase inshallah. I think
Okay.
Christians, Jews, and Muslims can all love this. So go for it. Explain why I think this phrase is beautiful.
Okay, yeah. I mean, the translation is just if God wills, you know. So, you as an individual, you in Islam, as far as I understand it, anyway, I have to put that caveat in. We believe in like there is free will, and there is also determinism. Determinism, I think it's called is it called compatibilism or something like that. I can't remember, but there's an intertwining, and there's a lot of discussion on how that works. But we have our will, we intend to do something, and generally Muslims are encouraged to say, Inshallah, I'm going to do such and such, Inshallah, meaning, if God wills it. Your intention is there to do X, and you're encouraged to say, as closing off to that statement, if God wills. And that's just recognition that, if my free will is my free will, if God is determined, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So yeah, it's a reminder maybe that even myself, just the fact that you brought this up, I probably just say it and don't really think about it enough. Yeah.
Love it. I love it because like there's something that you know us Americans say is man makes plans and God laughs. And
Right.
and that is the epitome of inshallah. It's just literally like, we can make all the plans we want, but at the end of the day, we don't get to decide. We don't get to decide how the world goes and how everything goes. It's already determined. There's a plan
Yeah,
in
yeah, yeah.
action. It's coming forth. But
For
man,
sure.
so what would you want to get at with Hamas? Because I know you said that you felt that me and Shael were kind of missing something there. So what
Oh,
would
you'll
you
have to
say
remind me. I
me
can't.
and
Was
Shael
that
are missing?
over email?
I think so.
You'll have to remind me. Yeah, yeah. What exactly was said? I can't remember exactly. I know you guys. I know Shael has kind of his position has kind of moved over time. And I recall when the conversation I recall with you and him, there were some statements made along the lines of, every member of Hamas involved, they should definitely be killed or something like that.
Well, yeah,
There were
when
some
I
statements like that.
say that, I would argue that I would stand by that in reference to October 7th.
Mm.
But like I would also argue that I'd say the same thing for every one of these like war crimes that are committed by the IDF. Every one of those people should be killed. I think, like Smotrich, Ben Gvir, Netanyahu, these all people that I would say the same thing.
So
Like
what about those serving
obviously,
in Gaza now? What about those serving in Gaza right now?
well,
Or that have
yeah, it's
served?
fair game. Fair game. I mean, like, in my opinion, like there's a little bit of a not fair game, but a little bit of definitely. So, like, there's something to conscription that makes me a little reticent to just generally go, these guys are 100% fair game. But generally, if you play the game of war, you're assuming the risks of war. Like it is a team sport and, team versus team. But
Mm-mm.
like I don't think that civilians have anything to do with that. So anyone that kills a civilian, should be, dealt with in the way that they should be dealt with. Like these are monsters in my opinion. Like if you want to go out there and play Call of Duty with other people who want to play Call of Duty, I don't have any problem with that, but I can never ever excuse the killing of civilians in any context. I don't see that as okay in either side. This is kind of why, like, if you go and you go back and you look at my criticism early, very very early, it's
Mm.
October 7th is so horrible, and
Yeah.
then very quickly I'm like, what the fuck is going on in Gaza? You know what I mean? So it's like there's something to you know, obviously two wrongs don't make a right.
Right.
But like I said, if you attack somebody, then they have the right to attack you back. You have signed up for that fight, if that makes sense. So like,
Yeah,
yeah, like
yeah,
that's kind of where I'm at on all of that. It's the same thing with like Osama bin Laden. Somebody's going to clip me talking about how great he is. But I would also say that like, yeah, he deserved to be killed for what he did. You see what I'm saying? And
yeah, yeah.
again, he also signed up for the game of war. Does
Right,
that
right,
make
right.
sense?
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm with you. I was just, yeah, I think because, yeah, I think maybe it was your earliest sort of statements that that I mentioned that I kind of disagreed with. Because I think I mean, you may have changed your perspective or so on since, I'm not sure. But I felt like, I was just having a quick look back at the emails. I think maybe, perhaps incorrectly, I felt like that you had possibly bought into or had possibly been influenced a bit by the sort of media narrative, if you will, of Hamas, ISIS, Nazi, this whole thing, which is
No,
where I
not
disagreed in
necessarily.
it.
Like I like if you listen for 20 minutes to a couple of different Hamas videos, there are
Mm.
Hamas people who sound pretty much identical to Smotrich or Ben Gavir, or you know what I mean? Like they're like, no, we're gonna kill all the fucking Jews, fuck the Jews, they're
I've
all
not heard that
pigs.
actually. You'd have,
I have to I can send some to you. There are
yeah, yeah,
some that are, and it's not every Hamas guy though. There are some guys who are like, we are the resistance, da 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 da, and like that's a different, like that's kind of going back to the point that I was making before, is like there's something different between like every one of these people in this group is responsible for the thing that this one guy did,
right,
and like I'm going to defend myself against these militants that are coming across our border.
yeah, yeah.
Like that is admirable, whether you did that, whether you put a green bandana on or you join the IDF. There's
Right,
something
an
to
individual defending
like
themselves, their family.
correct.
Yeah, this is where
And
I
like I
agree with
said,
you.
and that happens in a collective, collective sense a lot, but my point being is like, yeah, there is this ideal of, you know, I want to massacre people that exists in pretty much any war context. And those guys always exist. And there is this weird, you know, like people try to ignore this, but the thing is this is one of the costs of war, is that it elevates these type of people, and it's
Right.
part of the reason why I think that these kind of ideas like war should be avoided,
Yeah, of
because
course.
these kind of people exist on both sides, and tend to end up defining what the conflict looks like, because the biggest monsters get to set what the parameters actually are, because everybody kind of stays within that. Like once one person says we're going to fucking bomb an ambulance, then everybody's bombing ambulances because that's now the standard. You know what I mean?
Kind of. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I entirely agree with that, but maybe I'm nitpicking, because obviously there were calls. Some of these Israeli members of Knesset, I think it was, forgot her name now, but there were calls for nuking Gaza.
Oh
They
yeah,
didn't
yeah,
do
and
that,
that's that's
obviously.
that's
So
that's I'm 100% with you. And like I said, those are the
what
kind of
this,
things
what
that I'm getting
Smotrich and
at.
Ben Gvir would do, they're in power or they have huge influence. They're in positions of power. What they would do is probably much worse. Well, not sure how you can describe much worse, but I'm sure they would be more brutal in their action if they could. But they don't have the ultimate say, I guess, or they don't have absolute say or authority.
So
So there is a
the
collective
thing
thing. I don't think
about
it necessarily amplifies the
the thing
worst
about this
characters.
political game, like
Yeah.
I've done a lot of study into propaganda,
Mm.
and the point of Netanyahu is like a plausible deniability shield, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like he's gonna say the same thing in the more focus group tested way, and then he's gonna let them say the thing in the crazier way. He's gonna say it at exactly the right time, so that way everyone who's listening can tell he's backing up Smotrich and Ben Gavir, right? But if you actually go to challenge it, anybody who's trying to back him up can go, hey,
Yeah,
look,
yeah.
no, that's not what Netanyahu said. He said this. It's like, yeah, but he said it like minutes after this guy said this,
Right, right,
and
right.
he's
I'm with you.
referring to what this guy
That's
said.
politics.
You know
Yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, 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 yeah,
So
yeah.
like, and you know, as much as people hate the comparison, like you can see this in Hitler and Himmler and Goebbels too. Like even if you go back to Hitler, if you go and you look, a lot of the stuff that he said was very, you know, specific, and you know, he would play very specific rhetoric games, whereas like Goebbels and Himmler and stuff, they were explicit. Like, no, we're gonna exterminate the Jews. We're gonna, you know what I mean? There's
Yeah,
there
their
that's the
target sort
game
of
that's being
audience is
played.
different. Yeah,
Correct,
yeah, yeah,
because you know, and then there's also the German, like they would say things in German to their people and things in English for the United, for the world. And the same thing is happening with, you know, the Hebrew for their people and then
yeah.
English for the world. Like the propaganda book is being studied heavily. It's pretty obvious. And it's not a unique thing to Israel. Everyone loves these propaganda techniques because they work.
Yeah, yeah. I have to point out, I'm only smiling because you know this. Is it the IHRL definition of anti-Semitism? I'm not sure if it's that specific one or this adoption. You know, there's been a recent adoption across the US and I think in the UK as well. I think one of the examples of anti-Semitism they say is comparing the state of Israel to like Nazi Germany or something. That's right, isn't that what you just did as well? Sorry, that's why I was smiling. I'm just clarifying. You know, apparently that's anti-Semitism.
Yeah, but you know, the guy who literally considers himself Jewish,
Yeah.
but they don't consider me Jewish. You know what I mean? Considers myself Christian and they consider me a heretic as well. Like it's kind of
You
it's
consider
kind of
yourself
an
Jewish, did you
interesting,
say?
to an extent. Yeah, like
Oh, can
I
you
mean,
expand on that?
I follow the laws. You know, what is the definition that Yakov Shapiro gave you?
Well, he said,
If I fit that definition, you know,
well, is your mother Jewish?
is my mother Jewish? No. But
Well,
did he
he
not say
did
that
put.
you can be converted?
Oh, have you converted?
You can convert by a very, very beautiful rabbi, right? I follow the greatest rabbi ever to walk the earth.
Oh, right, is in Jesus? Are you saying that?
Yeah, like that's kind of like the idea is like I am now part of the of the entire, you know, arise, O Lord, judge the earth. All the nations are your inheritance. We're all inherited by God. We're all God's people now.
Okay. Okay, so
But there's still a choice, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. So Rabbi Yaakov, he
Yeah,
wouldn't consider you Jewish, though, right?
probably not. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, it's interesting. I didn't. I've not heard of this way of looking at it before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Nazarenes, those guys were a big sect of these guys. Most of the early non-Pauline Christians were Jewish converts to Christianity
Okay.
that basically fought with Paul about whether or not the Torah still applied to Christians.
Wouldn't they just be
Because if
Jews
you,
though?
huh?
But wouldn't they just be? I mean, okay, so you're saying, sorry, just for my, layman brain here, maybe less than. You are Jewish because you follow the non-Pauline sort of scripture. So it excludes much of the New Testament, right?
Well, because I follow the original covenant.
Okay. Can you, yeah, well, expand on that? What you mean the original covenant?
I follow the Ten Commandments. I, you know, practice the Sabbath. I, you know, I do all of those, you know, commandments. I do what is asked of me by God, if it's ever asked. There's
Okay. Yeah.
there's something to, how do I explain this?
I'm just thinking these early non-Paulines that you mentioned that were Jewish and converted to Christianity.
There were
I
Gentiles
don't,
with them. Like this is in Rome,
yeah, I don't understand. If you are
but most
Jewish,
of them were Jewish
they,
converts.
but you're a convert to Judaism, you would say.
Right. But that's the thing is like the Nazarenes would say that they're both Christians and Jewish.
Okay,
because it's like
that's
we
where I'm
are.
confused.
We
Yeah.
practice
Okay.
the thing, and at one point there was a nice term called Judeo-Christian that got perverted,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, I
Yeah.
don't. Which, to clarify, I believe that those who bless Israel will be blessed is speaking of the guy, not the state.
Okay. Right. Right.
And I think that's a little quacky to sit there. It would be as quacky as saying that I should have to worship all these Latin immigrants named Jesus because they shared Jesus's name.
Yeah.
You
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
name
with you. I'm
something
with you.
after something in scripture, you don't get to say it's now
Borders and
that
whatever.
thing and now I have to bow before it because it's been named after this thing. Like,
Can
that's
I ask you a few questions?
wacky. Go ahead.
Yeah, if that's okay. Yeah. Are you good for time?
Yeah, I'm good for time.
Okay. So do you believe in the Old Testament as being divine and so on?
Correct. I believe in the prophets in general. I do believe that there is the prophets and then there is historical text, right? That is listed in the Old Testament. I believe the historical text, is as corrupt as any historical text could be from that time. You know what I mean? Why did you do this thing? God said he wanted me to do it. Yeah, okay. That's what everybody says when they do things.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like I don't necessarily consider like, the conquests that were supposedly instructed by God were actually instructed by God. However, I do believe the law, the word of the prophets, Amos, Enoch, all of that. I do believe in the prophets. I do believe in that, if that
Yeah.
makes
Yeah.
any sense.
Yeah, yeah, hopefully. I'm trying to process it, yeah. So when you said scripture there that has changed and so on, you're not talking about the Old Testament, you're talking about the books that are referred to in the Old Testament, pre-Old Testament. Yeah. So so do you believe that the Old Testament, that every word is sort of divine, or like, like I would about the Quran, for example, like it's preserved, and I don't believe in abrogation of verses specifically, but there's a context to them, perhaps, for example. Do you believe that with regards to the Old Testament? Do you believe it's divine? Like,
Yes, that's kind of what that's kind of what I'm saying is like
yeah, yeah,
no, but yes. So like I said, is like there are parts that are listed as historical texts, right? And then there
okay.
is prophecy, right?
This is
And
all within the
historical
Old Testament.
texts, correct.
Okay,
Like,
you break it down. Okay,
you have how do I explain it? Like, so if you're talking about like Genesis and things like that, it's a historical document. You know what I mean? A lot of this is telling you the story of what happened. Like
okay,
when you get into prophecy that's being given, by the prophets, that I believe is divinely inspired. But the
okay.
other stuff is a recollection of what happened to these people. And
Yeah. So you don't
where
believe in
God
the
is mentioned.
yeah. Sorry, I
Go
keep
ahead.
cutting you. So you don't believe that the Old Testament in whole is divine necessarily, right?
Same as the New Testament. Like I believe the Gospels of the disciples. I believe the Gospels of Jesus. Like I believe that, you know what I mean? I believe in that stuff, but I don't believe in the letters afterward of people talking back and forth about what we should believe as Christians. You know what I
Okay.
mean? So like that's a different, it's a different text. Like something that is different about the Bible that isn't the same about the Quran, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the Bible is an assembly of a bunch of texts that had a lot of different purposes. Whereas the Quran was assembled at one time as one book with this purpose. You know what I mean? So to
Okay.
me, it's at least feasible to believe that with the Quran. Whereas I don't necessarily think it's that feasible to believe that with the Bible, given that like not all these texts didn't all have the same purpose. Some guy merged this together and made it into one book. It wasn't one book to begin with. It
How do
was
you
many
differentiate?
texts.
How do you differentiate between what is sort of divine and what is, I guess, man-made or influenced?
Well, a lot of it is the rhyming, if that makes sense. It's the reiteration of the same themes over and over and over and over. Does that make sense? So, like, and then there's also something that I guess it's hard to describe, but I think the best way it's ever been described was by a great man by the name of Dave Smith. And
Dave
it's
Smith.
how he said he found God is that his kid was having open heart surgery, and he was obviously, as any parent would be, a wreck. And he said at that point he didn't know why, but he just started praying and he started bargaining with God. And there's something about that where he said, in retrospect, it told him two things. Number one, that he knew there was a God. And number two, he did know what that God wanted.
How did you know what the God wanted? I've heard him say this. Yeah, yeah. He said it
Well,
in a
like
podcast.
if you're having a if you're having a bargaining with, if I was to bargain with you and I
Sure.
want something that you have and you're, and like, what am I going to start offering you? Things that I know you want.
Okay.
So, like, automatically, if you're bargaining with God, and this is something that I've actually told other Christian friends of mine, it's like, if you want to be better, do that. Take that exercise. If you were to make a deal with God, right? What would you trade? What would you offer? Give him that right now, because that you owe him that. You know what I mean? Because whatever it is that you just popped into your mind, that's what you owe God, and you're not giving him.
Where have you got that
Because, like,
concept
you
from?
already know what it is that God wants from you. You intuitively know this. Like, there's something to, like, you know, a spiritual, like, even if you don't even have to, like, Dave Smith wasn't a practicing Christian, Jew, Muslim, any of this, and he knew that God wanted him to be a good father. God wanted him to be a good husband. God wanted him to take care of others. God wanted him to take care of the people in his life. He knew that intuitively.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
what was the first biggest things that he could offer to God was the things that, like, those things pop into your head. It's like, how do I know what it is? It's that's how that's the best way I can explain it to you.
But
Like,
that will differ depending on your culture, where you're
I
from.
can look at a verse that says, kill everyone, including man, women, and children, and every critter that
Right, yeah.
walks upon the earth. I
Yeah.
can read that and go, nah, that's not God. You know what I mean? Like, there's
Okay.
something about that I can read and go, no, that doesn't jive with me. That doesn't, that's not God. God is the one that said, thou shalt not kill. God is the one that says, love thy neighbor as yourself.
How do you
That
know
is, God is the
you
one
got it
who
the right
said,
way
all
around?
life is precious in the eyes of the Lord.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Sorry,
know?
unfollow. I'm trying to just get the principle here, because I so when you mentioned like the fundamentalism and so on at the start of the conversation, this kind of sounds a bit, to me anyway. It sounds a bit different. So how do you know that you're picking the right sort of verses as being from God and not from God?
Don't.
You
And
don't.
that's
Okay.
why I have humility.
Right. Okay. Yeah. 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 Oh, that's pretty honest, good answer. Because you mentioned things not changing. You don't believe in things changing in terms of like the Christian belief, right?
The law, yeah, I don't think the law ever
Law.
changed.
So
Right, which is why, like, if we have the thou shalt not kill later, we had the law thou shalt not kill before. The thou shalt not kill always applied, and it applied when you were murdering men, women, and children and every animal that walked upon the earth. It applied then too. You know what I mean? It always applied. You know,
is there a
so that's kind of my.
caveat to the thou shalt not kill in in
Well, I do
defensive?
think it's more of a thou shalt not commit murder. So, like, I do believe that you're always allowed to defend yourself, obviously, from
How
aggression, but
where do you get that
defense
from?
is something that does not, it collectivizes but doesn't collectivize. It collectivizes in the defense but not in the target. Okay? People are individually responsible for things, right?
Okay.
So, like, if someone attacks you and nine of your friends were to beat that guy up, I don't see an issue with that. But if nine of your friends were to beat up him and nine of his friends because he attacked you, like there is an issue with that.
Is that from scripture
Does that
though? Is
make
that
sense?
yeah, yeah, it makes total sense, and I, agree generally. But you're just trying to understand what I'm getting at. I'm not trying to be rude or anything. Hopefully, it's not coming across that way or attacking. I have a decent idea of who I am, maybe, and my relationship with my religion and how I understand it. And I'm just trying to get an understanding of the connection between you and your like scripture or religion or and God, and how do you see what I'm saying? That's what I'm trying to understand with these questions. So,
Well, think of the parable of Sodom and Gomorrah and Noah and the flood. Like I again, like when I talk about these historical texts, it's not to say that I don't. It's like I don't necessarily think these are literal descriptions of things that happened, but they are meant to teach an idea,
are
right?
they from a divine
And if
source,
you
though, or divinely inspired? That will be up down to your personal interpretation on the verse and whether it correlates with others that.
correct and incorrect. So like what I'm getting at is like if you're looking at like the Three Little Pigs, right? The Three Little Pigs is a story that's told to kids to teach them morals, a certain moral thing. The Three Little Pigs never happened, but the morals are insanely important. And the
Right.
morals reflect a certain ideology, right? And so that's kind of where I'm getting at with this is it's like there's people who have these prophets and they have this, set of laws and how do they explain this stuff? Our God, right, judges individually. You are judged based on what you have done, not what your brother has done, not what your father has
Yeah,
done,
yeah, I
not what
agree.
your
Yeah.
son has done. You are judged on what you have done, right? The story of the flood, right? It's literally talking about when we find anyone who is good. If so, we can't destroy everyone. Sodom and Gomorrah, can we find anyone that is good? If so, we cannot destroy everyone.
Okay, yeah,
Do
I'm
you
with
get
you.
my
I'm with
point?
you.
Like there is
What I'm
there is
trying
a
to.
there is a absolute of you do not harm the innocent. You do not harm the innocent. Even if the 99% of Sodom was bad, if there was one person in Sodom that he could find, then God wouldn't destroy it. That's what he
And
was
you
told.
and you align with that as a sort of a principle, right? Are you saying?
Like it's a parable, it's a principle, it's a point that
Yeah,
like the innocent are to be protected above all. And it's
yeah,
and it's
okay,
a
yeah.
it's a principle that's reiterated again and again and again by the prophets, by Jesus, by Abraham, by Amos, by Enoch. The innocents are to be protected, and to not protect the innocent is one of the highest sins. It's one of the biggest things that God, I think, definitely looks down on. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
But
the highest
in
thing is
you,
to protect the innocent.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So you're sort of, correct me if I'm wrong here. I'm just trying to understand. So your sort of a relationship with, say, Christianity and so on is, or your, what's the right word? Forget it. Forget the right word. It's there's a very much a large element of it is personal interpretation. Is that fair to say?
For sure. For
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
I mean, like I said, the churches that are part of my certain belief system have been destroyed centuries
Right.
ago. So like all of this comes from self-study and I didn't even know the churches existed until a couple of years ago at one point. You know what I mean? It was self-study. I get to this point, I go and I look into, hey, I wonder if anybody else agrees with this kind of like thought process. And it's like, no, it was actually insanely common right after Jesus and the Paul guys won out,
So a lot of your faith
you
is
know.
based on intuition,
Well, yeah, self-study and prayer, revelation is what
and
what
like,
we would call it, but
okay, okay. No, that's interesting. Yeah, yeah. No, it's kind of different to my, I guess, my personal experience. That's why I was, forgive me if I sounded rude or too probing or anything. It's just because it's
no, keep
quite
going. I
different
love
to
it.
my. It's quite different to my like relationship with religion and so on. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll keep going if you've got time. I don't know what you're doing, how you're doing for
Yeah,
time.
yeah, go
I've probably
ahead.
got half an hour.
I
Okay,
mean,
okay.
and like I said, if you want, I mean, like I said, I'll probably have to wrap this up in about an hour from now if you want, but we can have a long
Yeah, yeah,
episode. Like I said, I'm enjoying talking to you,
yeah.
and I'm always
Likewise, yeah,
willing to talk to you as well. If you want, I'll come on your thing if you want.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We can talk about it for sure. Yeah, I've got about half an hour, so okay, sure. So we'll switch this around then. Okay, so um, uh, yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to say anything rude or anything like that. I just want to preface this with that.
Can't offend me, dude.
Okay,
You
cool.
can't.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm a
Look,
redneck.
my I'm like what 27 now, yeah, 28 soon, unfortunately. And growing up, I've been kind of in and out of say how much I practice my religion and so on, as you do, I think naturally, probably. And I looked at like comparative religion and this kind of stuff, and the my kind of question. I've always been Muslim and believed in Islam for sure, but my kind of question had always been, I believe there's an absolute truth, and what is, where is the line where, I believe in God. I was much less comfortable, I guess, with putting my faith in basing my faith on my own personal interpretation. That's what is doesn't resonate with me. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I believe in an absolute truth as well. I believe
Okay.
in a one God. I believe in a lot of those things, but I also believe in the fallibility of man. I believe
Okay.
that nothing that man can make is holy. And, again, not to offend you,
No,
but
sure,
that's
yeah.
why I don't believe the Quran can be holy because it was made by a man. I don't
Okay.
believe a Bible can be holy. I don't believe, anything that a
You don't
man
believe the
can make
Bible
can
can be
be
holy,
holy.
but you don't believe
No.
in the parts of the Old Testament that you said are inspired by
Well,
God.
that's kind of what I'm getting at. Is like men are fallible. Men love to spin things to make their own. Like
But the
as we
verses
see
of "Thou
now,
shalt
like
not kill," is
we're
that
all
holy?
talking. Well, yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. But that is written by God's finger.
How do you know?
That's what it says, at least.
Do you
So,
get what
like
I'm
I said,
saying?
again, we're doing our best, and that's why, again, like there's this humility that has to come with it, of course. But there's something to like we have to believe in the fallibility of man.
Yeah,
And like, there's something to if you have Jesus, right, which I think we mutually agree is a prophet, correct?
yeah, yeah, definitely, yeah, of course, yeah,
At the very best, we mutually agree that he's speaking the truth. And what is he coming to talk about? He's talking about like there's actually other paths to redemption. Why? Because it's about the repentance, right? That's the point that I've made to people before about what is baptism versus, the sacrifice versus like it goes all the way back to Cain and Abel. It's about actually repenting about what it is that you're doing. If you're just going through the motions, it's irrelevant. And to me, basically what Jesus was coming to attack was the ritual, the fact that people were going through the motions. And it's like, I'm not, and that's why he had to clarify, I'm not coming to change the law, but to fulfill it. I'm trying to show you how you actually do this, right? This is what God asked you to do, is what I am doing. Do you
yeah,
see what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
like there's a like an idea of like even Jesus is pointing out that humans had added to God's law things that were never in God's law. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Maybe,
And had removed from God's law things that were in God's law. And that
yeah.
was the point he was coming to explain to people. It's like, you are not doing it right. This is how you do it. And it's like, that's kind of
But
like
how do you
where
know? How
my
do you know that? But
belief,
how do you know he was saying that and he came and he said all this?
well, like I said, it's what's written. And like,
But you're not
again,
sure
it's not,
about what's written as well. Do you get where I'm coming from? I'll maybe I
I
won't
am,
push
but
too much there,
yeah,
but
I get what you're getting at, and like I said, it's not an uncommon critique, and
yeah.
and a lot of people like to come at it from that, but like I don't know, man. this is something that a lot of hands have had on it, and not only have there been a lot of hands on it, there've been a lot of hands that have openly been pretty corrupt on it. You know, translating and mistranslating
Mm.
intentionally, removing books that Jesus himself cited. So it's like you're going to tell me that this is right, but Jesus is citing, Enoch in his ministry in the Gospels, but you removed it saying it's heresy. So why is Jesus citing heresy? So it's like you can say that I'm being inconsistent, but so are you. Like
Mm.
at a certain point, it's like, where's the rest of the 6,000 books that people have written and said are part of the Bible? In the Quran's case, you have Hadith. And it's like
Mm.
there's a lot of people who have written stuff and said this is also divinely inspired text. How do you decide
I
who's
don't think
right and who's
so.
wrong?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Hadith we wouldn't consider divinely inspired.
Not all of it.
Oh, I've not heard that. I don't think,
At
unless
least
I'm wrong.
I've been told there are some that literally see it as like divinely inspired. But again, I could be
Oh, maybe
wrong.
Hadith
This is
Qudsi or
humility,
something.
man.
I'm not sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no. Yeah. I'm not trying to like attack you or anything. I'm just trying
But
to
that's kind of what I'm getting at to an
Yeah,
extent is
yeah.
like almost like basically, the difference between Quran and Hadith and what you have just explained at least would be the difference that I'm considering, say Paul's letters, say, you know what I mean, things like that. It's just like these are people waxing poetic. It's not the same gravity as this other stuff, even though it was bound into the same book.
Yeah, I'm with you, but it's how you derive. Here's an example. Do you believe that like homosexuality and stuff is a sin in 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 your I'll say Christianity, right? In non-Pauline Christianity.
I would say that the answer is probably. And the reason I would say probably is because the specificity, again, if you dig into it, is on it seems to be young boys. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not banned, if that makes sense. Because if you
Yeah,
look
wait,
at the Noahide laws, right,
yeah.
the wording that's used is sexual immorality.
Mm.
Now, rape, I think, is pretty clearly defined under sexual immorality. I think like necrophilia or bestiality would be very
Yeah.
clearly sexual immorality, right? But like, is homosexuality sexual immorality? And that's in my opinion questionable because if you go and you look at the contextual bans in Leviticus of homosexuality, it's in context of a population crisis. So and it's in context of again a historical record of the Israeli laws, and I'm talking about ancient Israel,
Mm.
not so not saying that it is or isn't, I don't know for a fact, but again, I try my best not to be sure about things that I don't think I'm very sure of,
Yeah,
if
yeah, and
that
that's
makes sense.
respectable for sure. Yeah, yeah. No, the only reason I asked that question is because based on what you've said, you would say, correct me if I'm wrong, that's acceptable to have differing opinions on this and different interpretations. So some will say it is totally fine. Some will say no, it's prohibited, and you are either not sure or you believe that each person is entitled to their opinion. Are you saying right?
Well, like I said, I mean, there's only one opinion that matters,
Yeah, but okay, but what is that opinion?
yeah, I'm not sure exactly. Again, given the specificity that's given, what exactly is there? Like, there is other commands such as go forth and multiply and things like that I think kind of conflict with that. But I also am a big on that. Like I said, it's you don't get people to change what they're doing by being an asshole and hatred and
Yeah, of course, of course.
and
No, I'm
attacking of,
just
of of the
the
way that people think.
yeah, yeah. The only
So
reason
like
for this
there's a little bit of both to that. It's like, I don't know. In the grand scheme of things, I have a hard time thinking that that's at the high end of the list. But again, I don't want to say that and give bad direction, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And the only reason I use that example is, in my understanding, there are, say, in the UK anyway, there are like some churches that where they say it's not allowed and that kind of thing, and then there are other churches where, I don't know, they bless like gay marriage, and or like reformist, I think, churches and stuff, where they now accept, and they say, yeah, like you said, it potentially it was only about like rape or young boys or so on. So yeah, I was just asking that question just to ascertain whether, in your view or belief, that it's acceptable for people to interpret things different, basically, right? And it sounds like you're saying yes, that is the case. Either that, or you're just unsure on what the correct interpretation is, and there is a singular correct
Be
interpretation.
more the latter. It'd be more
More
the
the latter.
latter. I'm unsure
Okay, yeah.
about what the correct interpretation is. Not that anybody could define it any way they want. That's kind of why I say there's only one interpretation that matters, and that'd be God's interpretation of
Yeah, but
what
how
he
do you
wants
know
us to
what?
do.
Yeah, but one
We
thing.
don't. That's the thing, man. We all fall short of the glory of God. We don't know anything. We're born naked into the world. Like
Okay, but then you
there's
can't blame
enemies
a
all
person for
around us,
getting
and
getting the wrong interpretation. Then God wouldn't blame them for. So let's say it was immoral, the correct God's interpretation. Let's just say. So the churches or the Christians that personally interpret these things as similar to yourself, say, those that have taken the stance of no, it's fine, there is nothing immoral about it, and that God's opinion on it is that it's not immoral, and therefore they condone it. If God actually, if you find out, oh, God's interpretation was this is immoral, he wouldn't. Would he judge them based on their wrong interpretation and their
what is the
immoral action?
consequence of heresy? Why is heresy such a big deal? The consequence of heresy, and the reason why I like to have that humility and not sit here and say I'm a prophet and I'm here to tell you what the correct way to believe is, and I
Mm,
know everything. I'm telling you this is what I've gotten from my reading and my interpretation. The
yeah.
reason I'm doing that, and the reason I'm presenting it in the way that I am and telling people to go look into it and make their own, reflections and pray and decide, is because in my also interpretation is the the person who's held responsible if you're leading all these people astray is the person who's leading people astray,
Okay,
right?
this
So
is exactly what I was trying to get
if
at.
you
Yeah.
have this pastor going around telling everybody that they're totally fine and he's right, then he has nothing to worry about. But if he's wrong, then I think God's going to have a reckoning with him for telling all his people to do the wrong thing.
Yeah, yeah. So, if I
Does
may,
that
and
make
correct me if I'm
sense?
wrong. I think so, but just correct me if I've misunderstood, So the leadership, like the pastors, the heads of these groups, right? If they misinterpret, get the wrong interpretation, right? And if they're preaching that, then God will hold them responsible if their interpretation was other than the interpretation that sorry, not interpretation, but or the interpretation that God intended, or wherever God decided the moral the moral stance is that what you're saying? Yeah.
So there's something that is important to understand, and expertise. Again, expertise is most expertly demonstrated through humility. We talk about the Dunning-Kruger effect if you get into academia, where like the people who don't know anything are pretty obviously, then you get to that high where you learn a little bit and you think you know everything, and then you
Uh,
really start to understand it and you realize you don't know shit.
yeah.
That's kind of what I'm getting at is like when you're a pastor and you're presenting this as fact, I know for a fact this is what God wants, and you don't know that for a fact, and you're leading people astray, that is heresy.
Okay, but this is what's not making doesn't reconcile in my head. Yeah, that pastor, let's say they've done their best in their interpretation. They truly believe what they're saying. This is God's position on something, and they're preaching that, and it turns out, in say the next life or whatever, that they got it wrong, right? You're saying that they will be held accountable for that, right?
Well, they weren't sure that what they were saying was right.
No, but if they personally believe that they were.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They weren't sure because if they were sure, then they would have been right. That's kind of the thing is like there's
Okay,
that's
can I?
where
I'll ask you a question then. That just in response to that, killing a child is wrong,
correct.
right? And how are you certain of that? Why are you so certain about that?
Well, again, like this is not just backed up. That's kind of where I go back to where I say like this is backed up by scripture
Mm,
numerous times
yeah.
throughout the Bible, and it's also backed up by my the actual instinctual like thing that we talked about with the whole Dave Smith. Like there's something in you that
Okay.
automatically
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
just
Yeah.
tells you that that's obviously wrong. You see what I'm saying? Like it's
Yeah. In
backed
in
up
these
in a
extreme
million ways. Like
circumstances,
your
it's an extreme example.
inborn,
Yeah.
yeah, your inborn angel on your shoulder is telling you that this is not what you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
even if like this is something that people don't even know about, but I think it's kind of interesting. If you go and you go dig into the Holocaust, I tell people to really dig into it because it's a very interesting microcosm of understanding how people can do very atrocious things and how it even affects people who have hyper extreme ideologies that you would think would allow them to do these atrocious things with no issue, right? So we have Nazis in kill squads writing home to their families saying it's screwing them up killing
Mm,
these Jews.
mm,
You know what I mean? And they're literally systematically wiping these people out and it
right.
is messing with their head. And these are people who do not see these people as human. You know what I mean? So like and you see this from Iraq war veterans, you see this from, IDF veterans, you see this everywhere. You know what I mean? Like there's something in
Yeah.
us that tells
There's
us
an innate
killing another
disposition
human being is
on certain
wrong.
things.
It's
Yeah.
innate. It's innate.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
But
It's
there
it's
are other
deep in
things
us.
where people will say that without any external factors taking place, to their best of knowledge, where they two people might sit there and say, look, genuinely from within, I feel this is right, and the other person will say they feel it's wrong, right? So what I'm saying is, I don't think in every case you can solely depend on how you feel or what your intuition is on right or wrong. And what I'm
It's not
saying is
necessarily the intuition. I'm saying
to
understanding what within you is the spark of God, the very life that was breathed into you. You know what I mean? Like what part within you, and that's where the revelation is. And of course, it's something that you nurture over time. Like if you spend your whole life feeding into the darkness that's within every one of us as well, then that spark gets a little dimmer and it's a little more easier to justify the killing of innocent people and things like that. And this is part of the reason why like every genocidal regime starts at the very beginning with dehumanizing the people because there is something to if they're human I can't do this.
where I'm differing you where I'm differing with you here on the whole is I personally don't believe that God will hold someone. I don't believe God will have a negative view on someone whether they punish or not. Different question maybe. But I don't feel like God will have a negative judgment on an individual, be it a preacher or not, if given that individual was doing their best and really believed sincerely in their, say, interpretation or understanding of
I'm
something.
not entirely sure either way, and like I said, I don't want to say for sure one way or
Mm.
another, but I also will make a clear distinction too that I don't believe in hell.
Okay.
So I don't believe in any kind of eternal suffering for anyone. I
Mm.
believe that those who are not fit for heaven are destroyed.
Okay.
Like I just
Okay.
believe it's you actually do die. It's over. It's eternal life or no life.
Okay. And the eternal life is only for those who worship God and so on. You would say,
Say
right?
again.
Yeah, sorry, I was just checking. So the eternal life is only for those who worship God, you would say, yeah, I presume.
Correct. All that worship God,
Yeah, yeah.
all that are following the
The
Noahide,
Noahide.
you know, correct. All are getting that. And, and then like I said, the preferred method is, if you really want to please God, you want to do the best that you can. You want to show how much you appreciate him for everything that he's done. We got to celebrate the creation of the world every seventh day. We have to, give him all that the glory that he wishes. What do Muslims believe on the Sabbath? That's a curious question.
Well, we don't believe like God rested or anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's as far as I know.
So,
We just don't believe that God, rests and that kind of thing. That's the only commentary I've really heard from an Islamic point of view. Yeah.
yeah, so for me, it's not I think to just call it a per se rest
Yeah, sorry, I'm not
is
trying to
a no, 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 no. I'm not attacking you at all. I'm saying that this is like at least the viewpoint that I have is the resting is just like part of the thing, right? The thing is like you've done all of this, you've created the world and the universe, right? And then on the seventh day, you need to reflect on everything that you've done. And it's a reminder to us to, number one, celebrate that God created the world, right? So just as any other holiday would exist annually, this one, since it's so great, it would exist weekly because it's the greatest thing ever done, right? So this one is celebrated weekly, and it is a chance for us to do the same as God did. We are supposed to step back from our life and reflect on the week. What have we done that was good? What have we done that was bad? What do we need to make amends with people? What do we need to take forward into the next week? And what do we need to leave behind? You
You
know,
believe God sat back
it's
and
a day of
reflected.
reflection. Yeah, because the seventh day, God
Is it
didn't just rest;
metaphorical?
He sat back and reflected as to what it was. What was the hope for what was new,
Mm.
and so there's something to that I don't think we should lose, and this
Yeah,
is why like I really advocate for the practice of the Sabbath in general because it's
yeah,
just in my opinion, it's one of the Ten Commandments. It's obviously a big deal to God for him to put it in as one of the Ten Commandments. And to me, I
yeah.
think it's a big one for like it's changed my life. Like
Mm.
I was not always somebody who practiced the Sabbath, and my life has completely turned around from it. I can see God's presence in my life different than before.
Mm.
So there is something to that, and I encourage everyone to do it.
I have a lot more questions, man, but I have to go in like 10 minutes. But I'm just finding it quite interesting to hear and understand like your relationship with God and religion, And so my next question is, yeah, how does logic slash philosophy intertwine with your belief in God and religion? That's why I asked about do you believe that God actually sat back and reflected, or is it a metaphor, or do you see what I'm saying? Because
Well,
I would just think
there's
God doesn't need
a
to rest and or
there's a lot of
reflect, and
philosophy that I believe in, and it's yeah, I
what do you,
love like
yeah.
categorical imperative from Kant is probably one of the highest moral philosophy ideas that's ever been, came up with. Have you ever heard of the categorical imperative?
No, I'm just about to write it down. Yeah, was that Immanuel Kant?
Yeah, Immanuel Kant, and he one of the greatest British philosophers ever to
Yeah,
exist.
I've heard of him for
He
sure.
he came up with the categorical imperative, and the idea is any maxim which may be universalized shall be done. So the whole idea is like if you can universalize a principle, then you should do it. So if it would be better if everyone didn't lie, then you shouldn't lie. If it would be better if everyone didn't murder people, you shouldn't murder people. If it would, even if everybody else is doing that thing, it's irrelevant. And the way that we could figure out morality from a logical stance would be from a universalization. You know what I mean? If this thing is universalized, would it actually make the world better?
Yeah, yeah,
And
I
if the
follow.
answer
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
yes, then you
I
should
think I've
do
heard
it.
Jordan Peterson talk about some of this kind of stuff. I think so.
Yeah, Jordan
Yeah,
Peterson's a big Kant guy. It's part of
yeah.
the reason why I don't believe in lying or dishonesty. And like I don't generally like when I edit this, I'll probably take all the ums out, but I won't
Okay.
take any of anybody's context or any of that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
Because to
sure.
me it's just I can't stand dishonesty.
Yeah, I agree, man. Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you believe something ridiculous, this is one of the things that really has irritated me. Not that it matters given the greater context, but during this Israel-Palestine thing, it's just like the gaslighting and the bullshit, and like it's like if you hate people and you think it's okay to kill this many, just say it. Why are you making shit up about
I
there
respect
was
it a
this
little.
under there?
There's something about that. I said that about like Ben Gavir with his
Yeah,
little noose like
yeah,
pin,
yeah,
and everybody was so mad. And I was like, honestly, I kind of respect the honesty. It's the
yeah. I
same
get what you're
thing when
saying.
they
In
changed the
abstract,
Secretary of Defense to the Secretary of War. I was like,
yeah,
I appreciate the honesty.
yeah,
Like, let's quit bullshitting. Like, I'd rather you just come out with it and say what you're actually about.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah. For certain, yeah, yeah,
there's something about that I don't I really can't stand the weaselness. I have, as we've gone over, pretty weird views compared to most people. I have
I've
views
not come
that like
across
when you
them
say them, you
in the
get all
mix
the
that you have.
swords
Yeah,
coming out. You get all the swords coming out, and everybody's like, "Hey, what did you just say?" So it's like for me, I have such a disdain for that. It's like, what kind of coward doesn't just stand by what they believe? You know?
yeah, for certain,
And
for
that's why I
certain.
really hate that the UK is doing that because all it does is mask the ugly.
What are
Man,
they
all
doing?
it does is mask the ugly. Oh, I'm talking about with the banning of certain things being said or certain, all you do is drive that stuff underground
Hmm.
and you don't see it on the surface anymore. You mask the ugly. You don't actually have the conversation. It's the problem that the US had more from the corporate push when they were censoring everybody, but yeah, you have to just have the conversation, and really talk it out. And that's something that I've learned over the long run from everybody. Like, I love talking to people who disagree with me. I love getting probed and people going, "Hey, well, how do you believe this?" And then but you say you believe that, and it's like, yeah, that's you could be going, "Hey, I don't want to offend you." It's like you're not going to offend me. Like you're asking me
Yeah,
very good questions about why it is that I believe and why it's like, why am I not, on this end or that end of the fence? These are good questions, and we have to be able to just sit there and answer questions in good faith and assume that the other guy is asking in good faith.
yeah, of
Like I
course.
didn't come in here to paint you as an Islamist. I came in here to explain to people that like, yeah, actually everybody is different. There's a lot of political grievances that are fueling this stuff. And, most people are just trying to worship their God in a peaceful manner. That's the vast majority of most people. And when their house isn't on fire and bombs aren't raining from above, like you see in Yemen and Syria and Lebanon and Somalia, and like you see this across the Middle East, and you wonder why these people get extreme. I mean, everybody gets extreme when they're under attack.
Yeah, yeah, it's an extreme situation, isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, I do have to go in a couple of minutes, so I'll probably have to maybe leave it there. But I did want to just ask a few more questions about, say, just regarding your belief in God with respect to, say, sorry, how much of a factor logic is and philosophy, as I mentioned earlier, and versus, say, just spirituality. And also, I'm just going to list these things out. Maybe we can speak about them another time, and I'll refer back to this bit. Yeah. Also, if you believe Jesus is, the Trinity and so on. and whether God came down as Jesus, and the salvation type thing. And also,
Let's do that one for close. Let's do that
yeah,
one for
okay, go on then.
close.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you'd like, I'll come on yours and we'll have a lengthy conversation on whatever. I'll let you grill me as hard as you want. So the Trinitarian thing is easily explained by the Enoch point that I made before, right?
Okay.
So if we go back to Enoch, right, that we're talking about the old gods that were judged for being inept and corrupt, and they were cast out of their space. The direct quote is, "You were gods, and you will now die as mere mortals. This is the judgment from the Most High." So these guys were judged and they died as mortals. And God prophesied in Enoch the coming of a Messiah to replace these gods. So basically, he is an intermediary in the chain of command, if that makes sense. It's he
Is the
doesn't
term God
replace
being used
God.
loosely though?
God is, God most high. Okay, well, to use the term in a teaching context, Yahweh,
Right.
the Most High, he he is the one that is the Father, and then you have his Son, who's an intermediary. He has now inherited all of the nations of the earth. I'm sorry, I mean to cut my camera off, but he
That's
has
okay.
inherited all of the nations of the earth. But his authority comes from the Most High.
But is
So
he a part of God?
does that make sense? Huh?
But that sounds like a messenger. That sounds like a
Right.
prophet.
He isn't God, but he is God's son, and he does have deification. Same as the old gods had deification, but they did not have the level of status of God. Have no other gods before me.
A representative of God? Would you use that term?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but not just a representative of God. He's also a representative of humanity. He's the ambassador for both ends. It's
Okay,
the
right.
intermediary.
Okay,
Does
I
that make
understand.
sense?
Yeah, yeah. But there isn't a like part of God, or like the other one is like the Holy Spirit. So do you believe like the Holy
Holy
Spirit
Spirit
enters
is the
people?
influence of God. It's a separate. It's this. It's not a separate, but it is a separate thing. Is my influence separate from me? If I pick up this can, is that separate from me picking up the can? You know what I mean? Like it's my influence. It's me doing things. You know what I
Okay,
mean? It's the influence of God. That's the Holy Spirit.
right,
It's
right,
not
right.
separate, but it is separate. You know what I mean?
Yeah, as in God can influence people. Is what you're saying, right?
Correct. He
Yeah.
influences people through the Holy Spirit because he can't influence people directly, as we cannot,
Is the Holy
withstand his
Spirit
presence.
is the Holy Spirit just a way of describing God's influence on a person? It's not an actual thing, like an entity. It's not an actual
Well, yeah,
entity, right?
yes, and no. You know what I mean? Like,
Was it independent of God? This is
because,
what I
like,
meant about the logic part. This is where I get a bit lost in some of the Christianity, the
well, when
beliefs.
you're talking about metaphysical things, things are a
Yeah,
little harder to iron down.
yeah, for
You
sure.
know what I
Yeah, yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no. I think you've
So,
given
like
some
I
good
said,
answers, though. It's definitely like it's been very interesting for me, to be honest.
oh yeah, definitely very interesting for me. I hate that we didn't get as much digging into Islam, but it was still a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, yeah. We can do it another time if there was specific stuff
For
that
sure.
we didn't cover enough. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And maybe you
Well,
can come up with some things that you'd like to point out. Because, like I said, the Demi thing, that point that you made, I think, is a really good point. It's like, why are these certain specific things given without context? I would love to have like Omar's list of things that need context.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's if I at the moment, you hear a lot of stuff about say the Talmud and this and that, right? And honestly, whenever I see something, oh, the Talmud says, I don't know, they say stuff like, oh, you can marry your daughter or
Right.
something. I hear people say stuff like this if they both convert. And I'm just saying on an individual level, be it um, whether what is being presented to me seems right or wrong morally. Genuinely, I try my best to sit and just think, okay, where's this coming from? why they're sharing it. Let me genuinely just ask someone. Like the dhimmi example, I'm not telling you that being a dhimmi under a caliphate is morally good or bad or whatever, or you should accept it or not. Or, like, I believe in Islam for sure, but I'm not telling you what to believe, what not to believe, or whatever in this particular conversation or in that instance. All I'm saying is, when you hear something in isolation, I'm not just saying this to you, sorry, I'm saying I think to myself in the Talmud example, given the context that we're living in, let me sort of make an inquiry, let me hear more about it. Okay, can you explain? I might turn around and say, okay, what they were saying in that post that I read is right, and this whole thing is so bad and so wrong, but I'm not going to make that judgment from a single source statement that I read somewhere. And the dhimmi example is similar because an American, Christian, Jew, or however exactly you'd categorize yourself, you've heard something so specific, but you don't know, or you haven't been told. It's void of just the wider, context that it would exist within. And again, to reiterate, I'm not saying that, oh, it's acceptable if you look at the wider concept. I'm not making that argument. I'm just saying to anyone listening, and a reminder to myself as well, when you hear isolated statements, just look into it further before making any judgment, regardless of whether you're going to make a positive or negative or neutral judgment. I'm not trying to convince anyone that it's either way. I'm just saying, don't be so easily influenced. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, there's maybe a bit of a
Yeah,
monologue there or a
I'm
rant, but
100% with you. That's like I said, that's why I'm open to that so much because like the context is important. That's why I was open to the digging at. It's like, yeah, keep prodding at me. Let me know hey, maybe you might find something that I haven't thought of, and I need to go and do my research and look into and think about more. Like
yeah.
I don't want to be wrong, and the only way to be right in the future is to find out where you're wrong.
Yeah,
And
yeah, for sure.
if you're scared of being wrong, you'll be wrong more. And this is something that I tell everybody. It's like just have some humility, be okay with being wrong, so that way you can be right in the future.
Yeah.
And there really is a lot. There really is a lot that I admire about like the culture of generally of a lot of the Islamic people that I've met. Like most of the people that I have ever met that are Islamic, they're the type of people who, if you go over to their home, they're going to invite you in, they're going to feed you, they're going to take care
Mm.
of you, they're going to say a million blessings over you, they're going to take care of you while you're there. I don't know, man. Like every time that I've ever met, they're some of the most hospitable people in the world. And yeah, there's extremists in all walks of lives and beliefs and ideas, and those people love to, be violent. But I think that if we're gonna judge, the old fallacy of composition, you can't judge a whole by its parts.
Right.
And, if we're looking at the whole, in my opinion, Islam has brought us a lot of really great things and a lot of great people and a lot of people who think and care and really do a lot to make the world a better place.
Mm.
And it's something that I wish that I had really realized a lot earlier. And like I said, it's something that it's crazy, man. There's
Yeah.
a lot of good people over there. Like we had candlelight vigils after 9/11 in Iran, and that didn't get played on a single media station here.
Mm.
There
Yeah,
there
yeah.
were people who were like, "No, this is not what we do. This is not okay."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's its influence, isn't it? Yeah, it's how in control of your own mind are you, man? But yeah, so it's another topic, perhaps. Yeah, I really appreciate
That's a
you.
tough one.
Yeah, yeah. We should definitely do it again, and maybe we'll note a few
For
things
sure.
over email. And I appreciate you giving me your time and letting me probe you a bit as well. That was great, and I've
Man, I
enjoyed it overall.
appreciate
Yeah.
you coming and giving me your time, man. This was much anticipated. I know we had some scheduling issues trying to get it going, but man, it was worth the wait. So
Appreciate it, Omar.
if you hit me up whenever you want to get something set up, we'll do another one. Like I said, maybe next time your show, and we'll
Yeah, we can have a look.
wax
Yeah, yeah.
poetic on whatever you want. Your
Okay, awesome,
choice.
awesome. Appreciate
All
it.
right.
Have a good day the rest of your day and so on, and thank you for anyone listening.